Here's a great example of a question that we should skip and save until the end because it's clearly about the entire passage. So if we're doing the no reading strategy, we are not qualified to answer this. So remember, we want to save whole passage questions for the end. And after I do all the other stuff and come back to this, I have a much better sense of what I've read. So try to ask yourself questions based on the choices and see if they're yes or no questions. So let me show you. So for example, for choice A, sometimes materials behave contrary to expectations. So were we talking about materials? Yes, we were talking about salt. Did we have something surprising about the way the salt behaved? Yeah, they were talking about it stretching. That seems contrary to what they expected. Maybe this is a little strong of a phrase, so it makes me a little nervous, but I feel like I'm answering that yes or no question, and it seems to check out. But let's check the other choices. B, systems can be described in terms of inputs and outputs. What were the systems? Is salt a system? I don't think so. What were the inputs? What were the outputs? Well, it's salt. There is no input. There is no output. It's just salt. It is what it is. So asking a question here, I kind of have trouble answering it. That's not a good sign. I should be able to describe what the inputs and the outputs are because I read most of the passage and chances are pretty good they would have come up. If they didn't, it's not a great sign. Choice C. Models of materials have both strengths and weaknesses. Okay, well, what were the models? Well, they were talking about salts. Maybe the models are the models involving the salts, but I thought they were actually using real salt, so I don't know why that would be a model, but they have both strengths and weaknesses. Well, they weren't saying the salt was good or bad. They were just saying it stretched. So I don't really know what the strengths and weaknesses were. As far as I remember, most of this passage was pretty positive. I don't remember it being kind of negative and talking about weaknesses. So in terms of just connotation, this feels a little one-sided, this passage. I didn't get a negative vibe at any point, so that's not a great sign. D, properties of systems differ from the properties of their parts. Same question as before. What's the system? I don't really even know what that would mean. Again, it's salt. I don't know. There's nothing bigger. It's just salt. And the properties of their parts, well, it's more salt. It's all salt. The whole thing is salt. So don't let the weird science words fool you here. They mean what they mean. A system is a big, complex thing. We know what a system would be. So think about your body, right? You have your circulatory system, your nervous system. It's composed of lots of things. I don't really remember them getting into some big picture, lots of parts kind of stuff here. They were talking about salt. Salt, what is it? It's a material. That fits with what I read. Don't overthink these. That's the answer. It's talking about salt. And if we really want to, where do they talk about main ideas? Usually at the beginnings and ends of passages. So we should read the blurb. Here it just tells us that it stretches, so it's talking about a material. It's talking about a behavior. But more importantly, look at the first sentence. Inflexible old salt becomes a softie in the nano world, stretching like taffy to more than twice its length, researchers report. So it's saying that salt is normally inflexible, but it also has this property where it stretches. So it's the opposite. It's contrary to our expectations of what we would think would happen because we think of salt as inflexible. So that's enough. That's plenty of evidence. You do not need to reread this whole passage looking for more. We've got it. That's plenty. All these other choices have weak connections at best. Choice A has a bunch of pretty strong ones. You don't need 100% certainty. If you get to 80%, you are home. Take the points. Just take the bet. You're probably right. Move on and save the time. If you have to come back, you can always come back, but you don't really want to get bogged down in these whole passage questions. Your simple understanding is probably going to be enough to get the question right. Trust yourself.